Hey guys, take two. I needed to clear my throat properly, but today we're going to be talking about how to stop being stuck in your comfort zone. So, reading the comments from the last live from last week, we're going to address all of those questions. So, it was Mr. Therix who said, how do you stop being stuck in your comfort zone? And comfort zone being, you have a job and it pays the bills, you don't love it, you don't hate it, but at the same time, you have a dream in the back of your mind. You're just not doing anything about it. So you're not even motivated to do anything to change that life because you're so comfortable, And Bijal's comment actually piggybacks on this, which is how do you stay motivated? As in, how do you stay motivated for small tasks like working out every day or larger tasks like something you've been putting off? Can you give some advice, please? So we'll talk about this first and talk about how to get unstuck because they're kind of related. They're very related. When I first thought about Bijal's comment about how to stay motivated, I was actually perplexed. I didn't come up with an answer right away of like, this is how you stay motivated, because from what I know now is that motivation is a fleeting state. So you come and every now and then you'll feel motivated and sometimes you just won't. That is just us as human beings. So motivation is a state. And if we are going to go by the feeling of motivation and leading with that state, if we're leading with the state of motivation, ultimately what that's going to lead to is lack of consistency. Because unless you're 24/7 motivated, the consistency will just be really hard to come. And when consistency doesn't come, then results also don't come. So how do I tackle small tasks, or how would you tackle small tasks or even larger tasks? When, let's say motivation is not something that we wait for anymore. Let's say we can just put it now and identify, say, hey, motivation comes, motivation goes. Let's put that to the side. Let's put that to the back. And let's not let motivation drive us. This is all about creating habits. And part of me hesitates to talk about creating habits, but I will share with you what I do know. Over the last few years, I've been wanting to create my own habits. I've never seen myself as like part of the leader's sphere. And when I would listen and learn from other leaders, they're always talking about habits. And I always used to associate habits with routine. You know what I mean? I always used to think, okay, people with good habits have good routines, but there was really no need to attach those two things. So I'll give you an example. I've always somewhat exercised throughout, like ever since I was a teenager. Exercise has been part of my life, but I've been really inconsistent. So what would happen is I would go hard for a few months and then I'd think, yep, I'm all right. And then I'd stop and then I'd go hard. And that's just pretty much how it's been for the last 15 years. And then I think somewhere along the line this year, I was like, not even this year, the thought had been in my mind. And to be honest with you, this even touches on the fact that I was in my own comfort zone. I was in my comfort zone of health and fitness because I was already at a level I'm fit enough to climb a mountain if I wanted to. Excuse me, Kristine, calm down. No, but I mean, like, if I wanted to go for a hike, I felt like, hey, I could do that. I wasn't at the peak, but I never aimed to be at the peak of my health. I just aimed to be fit. But when it came to like really visualizing the person that I want to be moving down the track as I get older, I was like, I really want to be like strong and fit, like in my later years in life. And I thought, what does that look like? I'm definitely not driven to set aside an hour. Like, look, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm currently not driven to set aside an hour to go to the gym. And that's not even just, this is how I calculate, right? Here's my brain telling me, let's get fit. And it's like, okay, most people, or they say, you got to go to the gym for an hour. For me, what that means is I got to get ready for the gym, go to the gym, spend an hour there, then come back. So really, let's say that's about an hour and a half. I calculate my calendar, my time as like activities, like a full activities. And that thought alone like put me off. And I've been going to gyms for years, again, like I said, like on and off. So I had to reshape that for myself. And I was like, well, if you want to, how can you be fit? And how can you create consistency that's not like this? I've even hired trainers in the past just to keep me accountable. So I stripped it all the way back. I like stripped it back to basics. Right? What do you need to get fit? Activity. What kind of activity? Cardio and resistance. All right. What are you willing to do? Because this comes back down, it comes back to willingness. Motivation and willingness sound very similar, but they're not really the same thing. Willingness is you can do something and be partially willing without feeling motivated. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's talk about a job that you don't really love, but you're willing to go. And you might not be motivated to go to that job, but you're willing to go, so you go. So I stripped all the way back, got back to basics, and I was like, what am I willing to do for my fitness? And I was like, I can do 15 minutes. Why 15 minutes? Because I was like, well, I use like this boxing timer, right? Like every minute, ding, every minute, ding. So I'm like, so I'm going to do 5 exercises at 1 minute at a time, no breaks. And that was it. So really, I do 3 rounds of these 5 exercises and then it's done. And then so I did it. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, stop, day 5. And this has been going on for a few months now. But what I found was that the more I did it, the more normal it became. It didn't necessarily mean that I became perfect and consistent like immediately, but here are 2 things that happened. Number 1 is that naturally I wanted to then extend my 15-minute sessions into 20-minute sessions because I'm like, I'm there already. I'm already warmed up. And why not? Sometimes I was just in the mood, you're listening to the music. And the second thing is I learned a lot about non-judgment of self, especially when you fall off the bandwagon. And realizing like, okay, this is a big picture scenario. Like we're moving into like long-term life, right? Like, oh, hey, Phil, how you going? I just saw your comments now. You have to find a way to do it. That's being serious and training yourself to, discipline. Yeah, that's right. You're not alone there, Kristine. The same thing happened to me before. Go hard and then stop for a while off. Yeah, that's right. Because you kind of like lose your own benchmark. So you get to your own comfort zone. So, one of the things that happened was that I was naturally extending my workout time. But the second thing that was happening was like when I fell off the bandwagon or wasn't sort of in there doing what I said I would do, I learned that, okay, number 1, to acknowledge. And then the second thing is like not to judge yourself too much and just be like, there's another chance, but just make sure that you fulfill that chance. And then the longer you do it, the more it just becomes part of your life. And so you create a new norm. So at this stage, you're already not relying on motivation. You're more relying on a new habit. What I will say about, like, if you're still at the place where motivation is what you're relying on to cause action, you've got to really know how strong your goal is. Because when you know what you want, and it actually, I think a lot of the time why motivation fleets for a lot of people is because the goal actually seems so far away that instead of providing motivation, it makes you step back because if you thought about taking the first step to your goal, it can be overwhelming. But what I would say is this, like once you get to the stage where you've identified your goal and it really means something to you now, like you're really driven and you're really ready to get out of that comfort zone and start doing some things that make you uncomfortable, is to like avoid negotiating with yourself, like avoid at all costs. So this is what that looks like, right? So let's say if it's let's say you're doing the first step to start your business, and the first step to making it a business is to, let's say you have this thing and you want to sell it, is you got to sell it, right? And this was me all over, especially at the beginning, where I was like, I'll do anything to avoid selling, even though like that's what a business is about. Like you've got to monetize, right? So I'm not going to sell. And then I would negotiate with myself. I'd be like, okay, well, first I'm going to need this and I'm going to need that. So I'll add things to my to-do list. And that one thing would equal like 10 things. So I'll just do these things and then I'll sell. And then it's like more things come, oh, that didn't work. So now I've got to add this thing and then I'll sell. Okay. And I was just like postponing. And this did no good to my results, right? So technically I was like busy. I was like so busy. But at the same time, it wasn't really a business. It was just me doing stuff without getting any results. This is like so Remember in the past episodes or past lives, we've talked about how your actions, like your results in life, are a result, like 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. I didn't know this back then. I just thought that all action can lead to results. So I would give myself 10 actions, 20 actions, 50 actions to do for a day and still have no results. And that's because I was living in avoidance. Like I was totally avoiding the one thing that I was meant to do. Whereas if I had just faced that one thing, then I would have gotten a result and I would have saved myself a bunch of energy as well. So let's go back to the original question. So, how do you stay motivated, especially for small tasks or large projects? So, when it comes to small tasks and large projects, definitely avoid the negotiation with yourself. It's like, don't give yourself that chance. Actually, Mel Robbins talks about the 5 second rule, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, don't negotiate and just go and do. And that's how I started seeing the exercise. So I'd just be like, all right, don't feel like it. Now is the sign that you need to get up. And so you're overriding the need for motivation to come over you before you take over. So now this leads us to the main question, which is like, how do you stop being stuck in your comfort zone? Well, the reality is for most of us, most people, we have to wait for pain to actually do something. Which is wow, like it's insane, right? Like we're like, well, why would you not just do it and avoid all that pain so that you can get to the next step? It's just the way that we are. We like avoid, like we want to avoid, like we have to be in pain first before we like do something about it. Same with like health. We can continue to eat bad, but then if nothing's really happening to our health, like why would you stop? Or why would you leave a job that's paying the bills, but it's not causing you too much pain? But let's say someone new came into your job and you loathed working with them, then you'd be pushed, right? So that's approach number one, which is the most common approach, which is to just wait for something bad to happen before you get out of your comfort zone. Or you can willingly do it. And this is how. So you've got to find a goal that means enough to you to make you act. And so this is more about being driven by, what's it being driven by? It's been driven by possibility. That's what it is. Like, so you have one driver, which is pain, and the other one is possibility. And in order to understand what that means, it's like you've got to you've got to create something that is possible for you or you see as possible for you and start heading in that direction. If that thing that you want doesn't mean that much to you, or if it feels like it's so far away, so far that it's not even real, then it's going to be so much easier to stay in the comfort zone. You know what I mean? Especially when you come home from work and you're tired. Why would you want to take any further action? So, I've never talked about things like this, but let's go there. You first make a plan. What the plan? What am I talking about? Let's go back to how this really went down for me. I experienced pain. No one wanted to hire me in marketing, and I'm like, this job is all right. Like I was in a job and it was all right. And if I was content with where I was going to go in that job, um, whether there was a hierarchy or not, I could have stayed there for longer because that job like paid the bills. It was comfortable. I had routine. I liked the people that I worked with. But there was pain inside. And my pain was like, I was like, if I stay in this job, I'm never going to be able to travel the same way that I did. Like, I will never have that freedom of time. And that really stuck with me. And I think some people can, like, here's the thing, your life will be a result of what you're willing to tolerate if you're not driven by, like, that thing that I said earlier, possibility. If you're not driven by possibility and you don't fully get that what you want, like your dream, is an actual real possibility, you will live a life of tolerance where you just tolerate your existence. Like everything is just, you will live for certain moments, but everything else is like very blah in between. So I was gonna say, start a plan. What? I mean, I can only tell you what my approach was. My approach was this. I had this thing. I was like, all I want is to be able to travel in the same way that I used to do when I was a flight attendant. And so I was like, that in itself already cut out all the possible jobs that were available. Not that anyone wanted to hire me anyway. Like no one wanted to hire me anyway. But let's say whatever I thought was possible for myself, I was like, the only thing that I was willing to give up that travel for was to be in a marketing job. I don't know why. That's all that mattered to me. But like, let's say if I had an array of jobs and all of them did the same thing, pay the bills, I'm comfortable, I like the people. But I started growing my list of necessities in life. This is where it was. I didn't freaking make a plan. I wrote down what I wanted. Yes. And one was like the ability to travel when I want. And like I thought it was really great to be paid to travel as a flight attendant, but I wanted to be able to pay for my flights. Like I didn't want to be in a position where I'm like at the mercy of anything else in terms of allowing me to travel, both time and money. So I was like, I'm going to need a job that pays me in such a way that I can travel in a specific class that I want. And then here are some other silly things, which I don't think they're silly, but might seem silly to other people. I figured in our work, we wear a specific outfit. We talk to specific people based on that job, especially because jobs and our work takes up so much of our time, right? And I actually put on my list like fashion. I said, I would like a job where I can dress like beautifully, when I want. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm going to a job feeling like I'm overdressed, because I like to dress up. I like clothes. So they never teach you this in school where they're like, well, what do you want? Like, how do you want your lifestyle to be in a job? But really, this is like, like a rebirth, like after Emirates, it was like, whoop. And then I was like, hang on, no, this is a rebirth. Well, let's plan it this time, that's what the opportunity really is. You have the opportunity to rebirth yourself. And so travel, money, fashion, and I don't know whether I really considered the kind of people that I wanted to work with. I think I kind of sort of came around as time passed, but I also discovered that I was like, oh, I do like creative things. I want to be able to be creative, whatever that looks like. And so that built what my standard was when I started looking. When you set out what you want, the way that you see things is different because you can really like pair it up and tick it off. If this is what you want and you're looking at something that does not align, you don't really aim for that. But sometimes we do, because if we don't know what we want strong enough, you just go wherever. That's why a lot of people say things like, I'll just see how it goes. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, this is happening, so that's available. So I think I'm going to do it. I'll just see how it goes. Not everyone and not all the time, but for the most part, when we actually, like when we're driven by pain, or if we don't understand what our possibilities are for ourselves, we're just going to be like, I'm in this job, I'm all right with it. Oh, but this other job opened and it's very similar, but in a different company. I think I might apply for it. I'll just see how that goes. And so there's a very big difference in energy towards aiming for something that you want and sort of like wandering over to that direction because it's there. It's kind of like being at a buffet, you know what I mean? And you're not really too sure what you want to eat, so you just have a bit of everything. And then at the end of the night, you're not too sure whether you're satisfied or not. You'll be like, oh, that was all right, but nothing memorable. And so this is how, Phil is, you're saying exactly what I'm thinking. See your vision through your own eyes. Sometimes it's good to people vision from their perspective and views and opinions. Yeah, that's right. So like when you understand what you want, and that becomes like a real possibility for you, then you start taking the steps to get unstuck. You know what I mean? Because if you feel like you're stuck, again, that brings us back to that place of like gridlock, right? But where do you go from there? So I remember Mr. Therix mentioned in the last video that your goal is to start like an online business. So you don't need to know how everything works in the online world to be able to start something. You basically pick up what you do know and then you leverage that, right? And you take action in that direction. There is something called like the law of momentum, like in the universe. There's like a law of momentum that when you set something in momentum, then it picks up and then it will have its own kind of activity. And that is a very, very powerful thing. it's very powerful to set momentum in the right direction, because even if you make, with air quotes, mistakes, you set up your digital business and the infrastructure is like here, there, and everywhere, it doesn't work. It doesn't even mean that it's like bad or that it's wrong. It just means like you set momentum and now you're consistently in this direction of like building that thing. And all of those air quotes mistakes are really there to help you master what it was that you wanted to achieve. I mean, I'm always going to come from 2 points of view. One is to just go in knowing the steps that you already know. So if in your mind, your first steps is to start a website and you're not too sure how to start a website, you would start browsing like how to start a website. Very simple, and then you start picking up the pieces. The other perspective that I come from is to get a mentor. So if you want something and you want it sooner and you want to get it sooner rather than later, P.S. This has nothing to do with patience, impatience. It's more so like this is more about getting assistance and accountability. So a lot of people in the space who do find themselves stuck or unmotivated or lacking motivation or everything is fleeting is that we lack accountability. So when we're working on our own or for ourselves and we're starting a business and it's literally like you and your business is being built on your mobile phone, it's very easy to feel very small, because it's just little old me sitting in my room, typing on my phone. Like, how could this possibly mean like I'm building anything? So I found that over the years, this explains a lot about why I sign up to masterminds and I always get coaches, because it just makes it a lot easier. When I started this, I didn't know nothing about motivation. I knew nothing about how to do certain things. I just knew what I wanted and a couple of the steps that I needed to take. And a lot of the time that I kind of like fell over in the pursuit of this, like building my life that I wanted, it often had to do with the missing components around discipline, the missing components around self-belief, the missing components about self-love. All of the strategic stuff, like the actual tactical steps, they were just a step, but they weren't the thing that stopped me. And so it was actually being in those programs, being in mentorships, being in like masterminds that made me accountable. And the true thing is, when you have invested something, like you've put money towards something, whether it's a small amount or a large amount, you've actually got skin in the game and you feel a lot more accountable to yourself. You know why you feel accountable to yourself this time around, like after you've invested, is because you physically put money into something and you know that if you don't participate fully and well, that your money's going nowhere. But when we don't invest in things, I mean, you like the value of things really, like everything's just one big blob. And so for me, I think a big part of the continuation was knowing to begin with that I was going to need help. And help is not a bad thing. It's actually been the best thing. I think a lot of the things that I know now about digital marketing and all the technical things, because I've never really considered myself as a technical person, like someone who knows buttons and da 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 da. And now I train all of that stuff. The way I was able to learn those was through specific programs and having accountability and having some skin in the game. So if you feel as though you're not at that place where you can fully rely on your own motivation, discipline, and whatnot, it's good to get a coach. It's good to get a coach in whatever you think it is that you need the most help with. I kind of want to say that in a way that's not like, I don't know, sometimes I hesitate to say things like help and whatnot, because I feel like sometimes that makes people think that they're weak. But I actually think when you go and do that, it's more that you're strong, because you're willing to admit like, hey, I've got strengths. And also there are areas that I need help with developing. So now this leads into Koi's question. So Koi asked a question in the last YouTube live about paradigms. So I don't know, have you guys heard the word, Phil, have you heard the word paradigm? I've known about this for a while, but it's just language that I've never used because I don't know whether it connects with people. But generally, like paradigms are, it's like knowing, it's like not like being somewhat aware of a belief system that exists within your mind. And if it exists within your mind, it's highly likely that it exists within your reality. So, like paradigms are like belief systems. Sometimes they're strong belief systems that push you forward. But oftentimes, like I guess when we're talking about things like paradigms, it's more the things that limit you. So you're actually having to shift your paradigm into a certain place to be a lot more effective in getting what it is that you want. So, and a lot of the programs out there are all about shifting those paradigms to help. Yeah, and they all come in different shapes and forms. You can go and shift your paradigm from like NLP courses. So last week we talked about NLP. Was that last week? A couple of weeks ago. Neuro-linguistic programming, personal development courses which help you with awareness, where you can actually see yourself. I'm not saying like physically, but you start to see and notice some behaviors that you have. And they are wild. Like those ones which help you see your own behaviors like so boldly enough to make you want to pivot. They're so like they are wild. And so yeah, to answer Koi's question from last week, it's like am I familiar with paradigms? Yes. Paradigms are a great thing to work on because when you're working on shifting your paradigm, ultimately what happens is you basically start getting what you want in life. You start getting yourself unstuck from your comfort zone because you start to see what's keeping you in your comfort zone. So whether that is something like your belief around self-worth or your capabilities, sometimes a lot of that comfort zone stuff is really like, sometimes we talk about ego and fear and love, right? And you can be driven by love, but you can also be driven by fear. And fear is like sometimes ego. It's the one that keeps you in check because its job is to keep you safe. And if you're telling your brain, you're like, hey, I'm going to quit this job and start my business, your ego is going to be like, honey, no. Like that is not safe, especially if there's no proof around you. Let's say if you're a circle and you're the only one in your circle that's like, hey, I want to do something of my own. Like one of the things I learned recently is like whatever you're looking for, you're going to find it. If you're looking for something positive, you're going to find it. If you're looking for something negative, you're going to find it. There's a law about it, and I don't know if I can explain it very well, but basically all everything, like all of that is available for you to find if you're looking for it. So I talking about this is like it's beyond what I know how to explain well, but I can tell certain things like stories to back up some of these like concepts. So catching up, Phil, you can try workshop classes for training. Yes. Paradigm, strong belief system of depending on, yes. I'm just going through the comments. So life is like driving a car with 5 gears, like first, second, third, and fourth, 5 gears to accelerate the car to hover over the vehicle in the direction where you want it. Absolutely, absolutely. So, so I think, when we address the original questions of like, how do you stay motivated from small tasks to large tasks and then getting yourself unstuck? The reality is that's all tied into paradigms. That's all tied into like what you believe. That's also understanding how we are as humans, which is like motivation is fleeting. So to be able to embrace that and not have to fight yourself, sometimes you feel like you're fighting yourself when you're waiting for motivation to happen. Then it can kind of just feel like you're fighting internally and all this energy is happening internally, but nothing is changing around you because the actions haven't met the desire just yet. So that's where we are at the moment. Anybody have any questions about this? I'm trying to think about this motivation thing because it's a lot deeper. Like I'm actually surprised when I first read the question, I just didn't really know how to answer it right away because I'm like, how does one stay motivated? And that's when I realized it's not really about honing your motivation. It's about honing habits that will see you through, that will get you to do something that you don't want to do. And can I just pose this to anyone here who is interested in starting a business or has started a business but feels that motivation is fleeting? If you're in that state where you feel like, right, I'm here, I've set myself up, but I just don't know how this is going to keep going forward because especially at the beginning, business can be like this, because you're only relying on yourself. And even when you get a team, you're still the leader. So everyone's relying on you. I would like, if you're in that place, just look at your business as if it's not yours. Like, this is how I would see it, right? Like, if I had a job and I was meant to show up because I'm employed by someone, sometimes it's a lot easier for us to show up for someone else because you kind of feel like, oh, I'm just gonna go, like, whatever, and you detach all of these. Um, thanks, Phil. You detach the pressure, you detach all of what we think it means to us, and then we just show up. So if you feel like if you're in your business and you and you feel like motivation is waning and results are waning, you kind of have to flip that in some way. And I find that the easiest way that I flip it for myself is like, all right, if this wasn't your business and you had to show up because someone else got you to, what would you do? Like, you're either going to make an excuse or you're just going to show up and remove all the drama. And in terms of making the tasks done, well, on the practical perspective, I just write a list. Yes, I write a list. I just write a list of what I need to get done, and then I tick them off. And I don't know if this is the best way to do things because, from what I know with like larger businesses and corporations, I don't know if they operate off lists, but I do know that it helps me. And also it helps whoever that I work with. So right now I've got 2 people helping me do some things at my work, and it helps us keep track of things to get done. And instead of, so we look at the project as like the full picture of the project, and we just start tackling one task at a time. And it's just that, some people track their time, but I don't. I was going to say, what can be done in this situation? Time blocking. So I know, like, from my personality, I don't know if it's my personality or just the way that I am. Sometimes I might be doing a task and I'm sort of over it within 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But I do know that if I needed to go somewhere else, when I have a very, very tight schedule, I'm like really strict with the way that I do things. So I'll time block. Like 20 minutes here, 20 minutes again, and in every 20 minutes I'm achieving something, and that's helped me become a lot more productive. So you need to write down the things that you need to do. You might get to a stage in your business as well where it's not so much about the quantity of tasks that you do, but the goal that you have. So let's say if you have a financial goal for that month, right? It's about tracking those goals. So this is going to sound like so work like now, but this is what it comes down to, right? You develop your inner to then impact your outer. And what does that look like in the outer world? You're like, this is how much I want to achieve. 10K this month, 20K this month, 30K this month. How does that happen? And by the end of it all, it comes down to like, okay, how many sales conversations are you having? If your goal is 20K for the month and you're having 5 sales conversations and your product is priced at this amount, but your conversion rate is like 50%, is that going to lead to you getting that dollar value? That just sounded like a whole bunch of, like, I never would have thought that I'd ever talk about that, but that's kind of what it gets to. After, it's fun. It's fun and it's scary. And to be honest with you, I have never, ever been a person who was driven first by money. I was always the kind of person driven by passion first. And I spent so much time and energy looking for that passion back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until one day, I think it was actually last year, something like hit me. Something happened and it hit me. And this thing made me realize, like, passion is good, but you better sort out, like, you gotta have financial goals. I think what was happening was, like, I was hitting some goals, but I wasn't bothered by them. And because I wasn't bothered by them, I wasn't tracking them. I was tracking, like, how full, it's going to sound so fluffy, but I was like, how full is my heart right now? Do you know what I mean? But like, your efforts could be fully spent and your heart could be fully full. But if you want to impact your life and you want to change and you want to elevate your life, like your lifestyle, the things that you could provide, like even charities. I remember thinking to myself, I'd like to be able to donate to 5 charities consistently every month. And because I wasn't caring about money, and I was like, the funny thing about being here on social media, and you have like the clients that you want to work with and the clients who want to work with you all see each other. So it's like you're in a constant dance of like visibility, waving to everyone's waving at each other, like you're all willing and ready to work with each other. So my approach was like, if I got inquiries, I did it, and if I like the partnership, then I did it. If I didn't, I was chilling. Like that was just my approach. I was never like, okay, got this goal, got to go for more. Got this goal, got to go for more. And so everything was kind of like done in drips and drabs, and that is why I was able to tolerate. Big difference, tolerate what was going on, and it kind of made when that thing happened, it made me feel like I'm actually out of control. Like, not in a bad way, but I was like, looking at the big scheme of life, like, okay, great, you found your passion. Okay, great, you have inbound inquiries, you have projects coming in for you. That's fine, that's good. But then I was like, what about moving forward? Like, what about when I want to achieve other, talking about that travel thing that we talked about before? And I was like, you want to have freedom to travel? Like, yes, now I have time to travel if I want, because I'm in control of my time. But then what if I wanted to elevate? What if I was like, I want to take my family on a holiday and I don't want them to pay for anything? Like, that sounds so great, but nothing in my actions was doing that. The only thing that was my actions related to was like doing things that would serve me and some. And I'm trying to express this not from a place of like greed. We should always have more, 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 more. But I was around this time, and even before that, that's when I started working on my money mindset and trying to understand, like, what does money mean to me? And I was like, well, I think it means so much to you that you've started to actually avoid it. Like, I didn't know that I was operating from a place of avoidance. I was avoiding anything where I was targeting money, and I was avoiding, you know what I mean? That's why I wasn't looking for anyone, that's why I'd let clients come to me. And it's great because I can prove, like, yes, if you set out clients, and you're there online, you will be found. That's just the way and I'm not saying that it happens without you doing anything. Of course, you have to do some things, but if you want to reach goals, you've got to change the way that you operate. It is just a fact. And these things started to become true to me. But like I said, we work to avoid pain. And that pain arose last year. And I was like really, really busy. And I just realized, I was like, I'm actually bloody out of control over here, you guys. Like, I can work to serve myself. I can work to be all right. I've never really planned a future. I've never really been driven by money. And then I had to like halt, pause. This is when I started seeing my wellness coach, because I was like, I have the capacity to do this, to build this, da 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 da. So what's going, like, I want to understand what's going on in my mind in terms of money. Like, what's happening? And so we did some things like sacred geometry. And this is when all the crying came, like all my breakthroughs, like around money mindset, sort of came around there. I'm thinking all of them, a lot of them. And I really, what I discovered in our sessions, because I'm a very visual person, so I was visualizing things as we were in that sacred geometry sort of experience. And I remember visualizing my parents when I was young and their conversation around money. And then me as a child, like putting on, like, this is what I saw, right? I would overhear a conversation and then I would take it on, and I saw it in me, like in my being as a child, thinking that I was the burden. Like, they never said anything about this, but I made it mean that. I made it mean that my school fees were a burden. I made it mean that money is hard to work for. I had so many meanings around money. And so what happened, I always talk about the subconscious and how we are driven by that subconscious, that operating system, the operating system that we don't even realize is operating us. And that explained the whole of everything, of why I never was like aiming for money. And it wasn't because, I don't really care about it. It was actually because I put so much meaning on it that I avoided it. And I would take it in when it was brought to me. And what I would do is I would work. I just wanted to work a lot. That's how I thought it should be. And then anyway, you wouldn't believe, as I started unraveling these things, of course I had to start thinking in a different way. Because what happens is, once you acknowledge and you see what you were like before, and it stops, and you're like, right, well, that wasn't working for me and that's not me anymore. You're like, blank. Who am I now? How do I see money now? What are my goals now? What are my goals now? And it changed. So something shifted. I kind of did stop being driven by passion, but I think that's partially because I already live in my passion. Like, out of all of this, I already live in my passion. I work in my passion. I find it's actually so easy to work with clients because I'm always talking about something that I'm really passionate about. And it makes it really fun for me that transforms their lives or their business or something. So, but now I had to change. I was like, all right, now we're in our passion now. Let's set some money goals, because these money goals are the things that are going to get you to like sort out the lifestyle that you want. It's no longer a figment of your imagination. And I'm almost like, I'm not even going to hesitate to say this. I didn't even used to track I tracked it very loosely. Like, I used to track my income loosely. Like, for a business owner, that is not a good habit. Like, you know what I mean? We talk about habits here. Well, today's topic was like about habits and growing and stop being stuck. And for me, my comfort zone was that I built something where I got inquiries and then I got clients. And what's the opposite of comfort zone? Outside of my comfort zone. The outside of my comfort zone was seeking my own clients. And, look, at the beginning when I first started my business, that's what I had to do. But because I stopped having to do it. I stopped being in the practice of doing it. And I kind of just relied on what was going on. I'll take that. Oh yeah, I like that. I'll take that. Basically, if I liked it, I took it. And if I didn't like it, it's a no. It was just really simple. And so me getting out of my comfort zone was more like, all right, well, what's the money goal that I want to make this month? Okay, if that's the case, how many sales conversations do I need to make in this month? Oh, that was uncomfortable. And then, let's say with this amount of sales conversations, what is your rate of closing a sale in order to make that? And that changed everything. It's so interesting. The moment I set a goal and I made it something to track and something to get, it was something that, I achieved it. And that's because I shifted my focus. Here's the thing about being stuck and staying motivated. Being stuck, I want to paint a picture, so I'm like this. So when you're stuck and you're feeling like you're waiting for motivation, your actual focus is here. And your focus is like, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. But then when you go, okay, the acknowledgement is important. So now we're at the state, I've acknowledged it. So let's just put down these for a second. And now we go, what are the possibilities? And we kind of we pivot our view over here and we're like, what are our range of possibilities? What are the things that are going to matter to me if I made an effort? That holidays, these might be tangible things, but sometimes it's internal, right? So let's say being stuck in your comfort zone on the inside, but whatever. You go from here, this is very closed off, right? I can't see to the sides of me. All I can see is my situation over here. But if we remove that for a second, take a second to pivot it over here, we now have a different view, right? So now our view is over here. And in that section, that's when we start painting our vision. And to paint a vision, that's when you start to identify what matters to you. And to some people, it's not going to be about money. To some people, it will be about money. For me, I didn't realize that it was about money. At the time, it was about the avoidance of money. But now I realize it's because I cared about money because we didn't have a lot when I was growing up. And so changing that perception of here's me in my comfort zone, passion, passion, passion. And I'm like, hang on, passion is great. But in the big picture of your life of freedom of time, freedom to travel wherever you want, whenever you want, that's kind of over here. You kind of got to make some money to do that, to shift that, to elevate that. It's a logical thing, but it's also, it's connected to everything that we've been talking about. It's about your paradigms. It's what you think you believe you're capable of achieving and what you believe you're worthy of achieving. They're two different things again. And then if you want to elevate some more, we kind of remove this now and kind of go this way and let's pivot again. What actions do I need to take? And you don't need to take action immediately. Okay, there are some contexts which, yes, you must, and sometimes you mustn't. But what I'm trying to say is you don't need to scramble to be like, holy crap, like, oh my God, I've been in this horrible thing. What do I do now? And you start scrambling for solutions because like stressed out states don't necessarily lead to the goal. Stressed out states are only stressed out states, and they don't necessarily paint that picture. It's more about, okay, now I know what I want and I've painted that picture, and I wouldn't say like making a plan, but I'm not really a planner, so I'm not going to come from that perspective. But here's something. So there's this book called The 4-Hour Work Week, and look, I'm not even going to say that I read it, but what I know of that, I from my understanding so far, is that there's a large amount of time spent in planning the move, and I am the kind of person who takes action right away. In fact, I used to do and take action so quickly, so far, and like I said, a person who's not a planner like me, the only way that I would discover results is if I did it, and if it worked, I'm up, and if it didn't work, I'm down. But now I'm a lot more. Now I am a lot more sort of considerate. I always ask myself the question: okay, now that my vision has been built, it's built. Like I said, I've been saying this every live that we've been on, but I've never been in this situation before where I'm like, I'm right. I know, I have an awareness that I'm on my path, because I work. Yeah, it's been a few years, to discover, where passion meets purpose meets profit. It's been a while, but I'm here and I'm like so pumped about that. So I'm kind of like just soaking it up. I'm being in it. And what I always ask myself when I feel the urge, especially with my personality style, I'm like, oh, idea, let's do it. Oh, idea, let's do it. That's how I used to operate. Whereas now I always ask myself, like, am I course correcting? Like, is this action going to help me get closer to where I want to go, or am I deviating? And I think this is something that I'm still honing to understand, because some bright ideas, you value your ideas and you're like, oh, I want to go in that direction right away, and you start to like sort of logically try to work it out. But what this has meant is I've been able to conserve a lot more energy, that's for sure. And I've been able to do a lot more things that I love, that's for sure, because I haven't needed to attach a money value to it right away. Whereas before, because I wasn't being driven by money, the consequence was I had to do a lot of things which I might have liked. And I was talking to someone about this on Instagram, and like how, I love the process, but I loved it so much that I would even suffer through the process. And now when I've got that question in mind of, will this next step, will this next plan, will this next project help me get into the direction that I want to go? Or am I just deviating and making more things for me to do for myself that I really don't need to do? And it's changed. Well, I would say it has shifted a lot of my paradigms. And I still notice certain tendencies. Like I'm still how I used to be in so many ways, but I have more awareness of it, so I have the power to shift it. And this applies to, this is it. This is how you get out of your comfort zone, is you actually have to do the opposite. So if this is how you do things right now and you're not happy with it, the only other thing you can do is to do it differently. And it might feel really counterproductive. It might feel counterintuitive, but the only way you're going to know if it works is if you try something else. Because if what you've been doing has only led you to the same place, then the only thing we can conclude is that by doing that one thing, you're going to end up where you are right now. There's no proof that it's going to take you into the next step and into elevation. So, so that pretty much brings us to the 48-minute mark. And I'm having a read of the comments of Phil. Writing a list is fine. I sometimes write a list of honestly, writing a list saves brain power. You don't have to memorize everything. It's a lot to take on, and have to have a strong mind to take on that responsibility. Yes. Honestly, like a lot of the shifting and paradigm is really about linking your awareness of what's going on and translating that into action. It's really powerful to know, right? But actually, the person who talks about paradigms quite a lot is Bob Proctor, one of my clients from a few years ago, who's now a good friend of mine. So he started off as a client. He went to meet Bob Proctor and he did his program. And that was the first time that I understood what paradigms were. And a lot of within the personal development space where you're wanting to get what you want and build your life, like really, really, really shape the life that you want. A lot of it has to do with shifting those paradigms. Like you really must. So yeah, Bob Proctor, if you want to check him out, I know that he's on YouTube. I know he's got YouTube videos. He's about like 80 something now or 90 something. What? And he's like so strong and it's quite inspirational. But anyway, that's about it. And it brings us to the end of, yes, I've heard he always talks about money. And I'm just going to I promise I'm going to wind this up. But a lot of those books about money, honestly, like I read them from the perspective of, like I wanted to understand money. But when you actually get into those books, it's not actually about just money. It's about your way of being. It's your way of thinking. It's the way of doing. And money actually just becomes the byproduct of your being. And it's so wild. There's a book, I think I mentioned this in one of the last lives. It's called The Science of Getting Rich. And it's an old book, and it's similar to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, another old classic book. And when you look at the title, you're like, this is going to be all about money. Then you start reading it, and you're like, this is it does talk about money, but it's actually about the being, your state of being, which then leads to the money. He's a cool guy, and I know stuff. I saw his 1984 video. Do you know who you are? I'm going to check that out. I have not checked that out. Yes. So, guys, it's always a pleasure. I look forward to these Fridays now. We've been doing this for a couple months, 2 or 3 months. And it actually also jogs my Friday schedule. So I really like it because just before this, I was recording a lesson from my YouTube for Business program for my clients. So my brain was over there. How to make a script, how to do this, how to get 40% watch time. And now we get to talk about these things, which I'm really, I love talking about these things. So thank you for indulging me as per usual. And I really do enjoy seeing the comments. It really drives what the conversation is going to be about moving forward. So if you have anything that you specifically want to talk about, please let me know in the comment section. Phil, I really appreciate everything. I want to read more of this. So I've just discovered how to be able to read comments because I know that I miss some. So yeah, false evidence of a feeling real, internal battle with oneself. It's a lot to take on. Yes. But I'll be reading them once we hang up. But thank you again. And I hope you have a great weekend, a great night, if it's nighttime where you are. And I'll see you next week, next Friday. Guys, my mum is in Brisbane, by the way. She's in quarantine. She flew from the Philippines and she comes out on the 30th. Quite excited about that. I haven't seen my mum in about 3 years. You might meet her here on YouTube. All right, then. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, Phil. See you next week.